She's beautiful, rich, and the perfect wife.
Grinning smugly, those were the words spoken by my ex-husband, who divorced me just a week ago. He got unilaterally angry at me for not doing as he wished and thrust the divorce papers at me. He had always been a selfish person, but I never thought he would go that far. I remember being so shocked that I was left completely stunned. Then, a week after the divorce, my ex-husband showed up and casually admitted to me that he'd been cheating all along. Not only that, but he brought an invitation to his wedding with the woman he'd been seeing behind my back.
My new wife is more beautiful and richer than you.
But this man has no idea. He doesn't know the hidden truth about the woman he's so proud to have married. And soon, when I reveal the truth to him, he'll crumble to the ground in utter despair. My name is Katherine Blue, and I just turned 40 last month. As I entered my 40s, I've been dedicating myself to running the factory my parents started, which I inherited about 10 years ago as the new CEO. This factory was originally founded by my grandfather on my father's side. Though it's small, the factory does reasonably well. We have many long-term clients, and thankfully I can earn enough to live comfortably. Ever since I was little, I'd watched my parents working tirelessly at the factory, and it felt natural to assume I'd take it over someday. My parents had told me that I didn't have to take over if I didn't want to, but seeing the joy on their faces as they worked hard every day made me want to work like that too. It's not just my parents who are smiling. The employees and clients are all cheerful and happy in their work. The company my grandfather built and my parents nurtured is an irreplaceable treasure to me.
When I grow up, I don't just want to work. I want to work to make someone happy.
When I said that to my parents, they both smiled warmly. After graduating college, I started working at my parents' factory, and 10 years ago, I became the CEO. With the support of the employees, I've managed to fulfill my duties as the head of the company. Even after I took over the factory, the business thrived, and I didn't have any major worries about work. However, my personal life was another story. I had never been particularly interested in relationships, and after inheriting the factory, I used being busy as an excuse to completely avoid dating. Concerned about my lack of a love life, a friend of mine practically dragged me to a nightclub one day. That's where I met James, who would later become my husband.
You took over your parents' factory at such a young age. That's amazing. We're the same age, but I could never do something like that. I really respect you.
When I introduced myself as a factory owner, most men looked at me with curiosity, as if it were something unusual. In worse cases, I even attracted men hoping to freeload off me. However, James genuinely praised me with sincere emotions. James was calm and kind, and I quickly fell for him. Our relationship progressed smoothly, and in our first year of dating, we got married. We were 32 at the time.
I just want to enjoy a relaxed life as a couple, so I don't really think we need kids.
I wasn't particularly eager to have children either, so I appreciated James' perspective. The only thing that concerned me was the factory, but I figured it wouldn't be so bad if the business ended with my generation. With that mindset, James and I were living peaceful and quiet days together. Or so I'd like to say. 5 years into our marriage, one day James did something unbelievable.
I'm home. Oh, and Katherine, I quit my job.
What? James, who had come home as usual, casually dropped that bombshell on me. Through our married life, I had learned that James wasn't exactly the most serious person. Even so, I never thought he would do something as outrageous as quitting his jobs on a whim. Why? Confused, I asked him the reason, and James, with a bit of a pout, began to explain.
I got into a fight with my boss. He transferred from another department a year ago and became the manager. But we just don't get along. Can you believe that guy? He's younger than me and acts so high and mighty. Totally unacceptable. So, I finally hit my limit and slammed my resignation letter on his desk.
The reason was so selfish that I felt dizzy just hearing it. And then James said something even more outrageous.
But hey, Katherine, you're making good money running the factory. So it's not like it's a big deal if I'm unemployed, right? I'm just gonna take it easy for a while.
His self-centered remarks infuriated me, and I couldn't help but lose my temper. Listen, James, let me be clear. I don't have the means to support someone unemployed.
What? Why are you so angry?
Of course I'm angry. You just indirectly declared you want a freeload. You quit your job for selfish reasons without even discussing it with me. That's completely unacceptable. James' behavior wasn't just unprofessional. It was irresponsibly immature, both as an adult and as a husband. I gave him a long lecture, but he just pouted.
Calling me unemployed is a bit harsh. Oh, I know. I'll take care of the housework while I'm looking for a new job. How about that?
Don't joke around. You've never done any housework before. There's no way you can suddenly handle it. You've never even washed a single dish, always using being busy as an excuse. And I'm busy with work too. You think someone like that can handle housework? Don't make me laugh. Start looking for a new job immediately. If finding one is too difficult, I might even consider hiring you at my factory. James had always left all the housework to me. Even though I worked full-time, I had repeatedly asked him to share the responsibilities, but each time he would sulk and refuse to even listen.
Fine. I'll get a new job, okay? I'll find one in no time.
James snapped back at me, but his job search didn't go well at all. Well, that was only to be expected. He didn't have any qualifications or experience that would give him an edge in the job market. Even at his previous job, he hadn't achieved anything noteworthy. By the time a month had passed, James' pride, which had him boasting about how easy it would be to get a new job, was shattered after receiving rejection notices again and again. So, what do you think? Want to work at my company? Reluctantly, James nodded at my suggestion. And so, he became an employee at my company. The decision to hire James wasn't just because he was my husband. Around that time, there was a wave of resignations at our factory. Employees were leaving due to career changes or retirement, which left us short-staffed. I thought having James work there would be helpful for me too, but...
Well, Ms. Blue, do you have a moment?
Sure, what's up?
It's about your husband who was recently assigned to our department.
Hearing what that male employee had to say, I couldn't help but hold my head in my hands. Apparently, as soon as James was assigned, he began abusing the fact that his wife was the head of the company and acted arrogantly toward others. The male employee had tried to delegate a task to James, but he refused to do it, claiming that he is my husband. I was informed that there were many others affected besides that male employee, so I immediately called James in for questioning. If you're going to abuse your position like this, you're out of the company. After that, you'll be on your own to find another job. Let me remind you, I can't afford to support someone unemployed. And depending on the situation, I might even consider divorce. Realizing I was genuinely furious, James grumbled under his breath, but managed to avoid causing further issues and began working quietly. I also told my employees to report anything troubling without hesitation. With no opportunity to exploit his position and under the watchful eyes of his coworkers, James managed to work normally at the factory for about a year. However, as he grew more comfortable with the environment, he gradually started slacking off. While he no longer acted arrogantly, he began shirking his responsibilities more and more. In the end, James began repeatedly skipping work without notice or leaving early, causing trouble for everyone around him. How many problems does he need to cause before he's satisfied? Even though I've already scolded him, is he still taking advantage of the fact that this is my company? One day, unable to stand it any longer, I called James into my office. I let out my frustration and disbelief, which I'd lost count of how many times I'd already expressed. You may be my husband, but you're also an employee of this factory. I don't let personal feelings affect evaluations, so your salary will be cut next term. And if you keep skipping work or leaving early without notice, I'll have no choice but to fire you. Are you okay with that? Normally, James would grumble under his breath and comply, but this time his reaction was different.
You know what? I've been meaning to say this for a while, but why are you always acting so high and mighty toward me?
What did you just say?
Do you think that just because you're the boss here, you're better than me? I'm sick of you constantly lording over me.
James shouted loudly and glared at me with angry eyes. It was a look I had never seen before. For the first time, I saw him so consumed with anger that I couldn't help but feel intimidated.
Do you enjoy putting me down as your husband? Your personality is seriously messed up.
What? What are you talking about? I have absolutely no intention of putting you down. I'm simply addressing your unprofessional behavior as your employer.
That's exactly what I'm talking about. That's you trying to dominate me.
James' angry words were nothing more than irresponsible attempts to avoid facing his own shortcomings. He was trying to paint me as the villain. His childish tactics made my blood boil. Oh, is that so? Well, unfortunately, I can no longer allow you to work here. As the person in charge of this factory, I must take appropriate action. And let me remind you one more time. I can't afford to support someone unemployed, so you better find another job.
If I don't, it's divorce, right? Fine, let's get a divorce.
The word divorce coming from James caught me off guard, and I widened my eyes in surprise. Meanwhile, James smirked confidently.
I can't stand being with a woman as unappealing as you any longer. I've been thinking about when to bring up divorce for a while now. This seems like the perfect opportunity.
As he spoke, James thrust a completed divorce agreement in front of me. Seeing it, I suddenly felt completely at peace with the idea. I couldn't continue with this man any longer. I quietly took the papers, signed them, and handed them back. There, I've signed. Since the house you're living in is under my name, you'll need to move out.
Yeah, fine. I'll leave that rundown house right away.
True to his word, James packed his belongings and left that very day. Looking around the now empty house, I felt surprisingly calm. I thought I'd feel at least a little shocked, but honestly, I wasn't upset at all, not even a little. Maybe I'd already given up on him somewhere along the line. My words disappeared into the quiet of the empty house. A week after the divorce, I'd already informed the employees about it, and they all took the news positively. Besides, with James, who never took work seriously, gone, the company wasn't impacted at all. If anything, It was a relief not to have to deal with him anymore. And so, life went on as usual. What a tiring day. After finishing work, I returned to my house, now mine alone. The house I live in is a detached home I inherited from my parents. It's a bit big for just one person, but it's familiar and comfortable. For the record, my parents had purchased a small used house in the suburbs and were enjoying a leisurely retirement. When I told them about the divorce, they were surprised but fully supported my decision, which was comforting to hear. Well then, let's have dinner and relax. Without James, it was much easier taking care of just myself. As usual, I made dinner for one and spent a quiet evening. Who could that be? Oh, maybe it's a delivery. The doorbell rang suddenly, interrupting my meal, so I headed to the front door. When I opened it, it wasn't a delivery person standing there. It was James, the man I divorced and who moved out a week ago. What, James? What are you doing here? Did you forget something?
No, I've got something I want to give you today. Mind if I come in?
Without waiting for my response, James let himself into the house. Before I could stop him, he walked straight into the living room. So, what is it you wanted to give me? Keep it brief. I have work tomorrow. Hinting that he should leave quickly, I said as much indirectly, but James didn't seem to care at all. With a smug, mean-spirited grin, he held out a piece of paper to me. What's this?
It's a wedding invitation for me and my new wife.
His words made me widen my eyes in disbelief. Seeing my reaction, which must have delighted him, James began to ramble on about things I hadn't even asked.
You must have been too clueless to notice, but I've been cheating on you for about a year now. And guess what? She's prettier and richer than you. Oh, and she's pregnant with my child.
As I stood there in stunned silence, James continued.
She's beautiful, rich, and the perfect wife. Our kid's bound to be gorgeous too, taking after her. So, of course, I really wanted to invite you as my ex-wife to the wedding.
Planning a wedding less than a week after the divorce? That's awfully fast. I thought idly to myself. James must have been preparing for this wedding with his mistress while still married to me. Even if I hadn't confronted him that day, he probably would have asked for a divorce soon enough. As I remained silent, James grew even more full of himself and raised his voice with a mocking tone.
What's wrong? Jealous? Oh, wait, let me show you a picture of my wife. She's in a whole different league from you. Better looks, better personality, everything.
With that, he shoved his phone screen toward me. Seeing the woman on the screen, I was once again taken aback.
Well, surprised. She's the daughter of an executive from a company that's done business with your rundown factory. I'm now in a higher position than you. From now on, you'll have to butter up me just to keep your work. Feels amazing.
James declared triumphantly, his voice loud and filled with self-satisfaction. In that moment, seeing his absurd behavior, I bursted out laughing, clutching my stomach in amusement.
What the hell are you laughing at? Have you lost your mind?
James stared at me with a mix of suspicion and discomfort. Oh, sorry. It's just, your new partner suits you so perfectly.
What's that supposed to mean?
My sarcastic jab seemed to land as James' face turned sour.
My new wife, Sarah, is 10 years younger than you. She's beautiful, has a great figure, and as you know, she's the daughter of a CEO, so she's loaded. Look at this watch. She bought me this expensive piece.
James proudly flaunted the watch, but I raised a hand to stop him. You seem to be seriously misunderstanding something. Let me educate you on something you clearly don't know. That CEO daughter's company didn't give work to my factory. It was my factory that gave work to them.
What?
James let out a dumbfounded sound, clearly unable to process what I was saying. Let me make it even simpler. Your mistress's parents' company is in such financial trouble that it wouldn't survive without the work we provide. Sarah's parents run a small business. Like my parents, they inherited their company and kept it running on a smaller scale. Our connection with Sarah's company goes back to my grandfather's time. It seems that their business was thriving in the past, but after Sarah's father, Adam, took over, their performance gradually declined. Recently, the downturns in the economy have hit them hard, and for the past few years, their company has been teetering on the brink of collapse. When I visited their company, I met Sarah a few times. She was technically listed as an employee there, but she had this misconception that her parent company was superior to my so-called rundown factory. Even though she's the CEO's daughter, she wasn't involved in managing the company and didn't take her work seriously. She clearly had no idea how dire the situation was for her parents' business. I remembered how Sarah had once mocked me when her parents weren't around. She even asked me to appreciate her because she thought her family gave me work. I was so taken aback by her ignorance that I didn't even know how to respond. So, if we're talking about who's in a higher position, that would be me, not you. James looked rattled, but still wore a forced grin, clearly trying to process the truth I had laid out.
You're lying. You're just making this up because you can't stand losing to me. That's pathetic.
Sure, think what you want. It's easy enough to verify, isn't it? Look into it, and you'll see that everything I've said is true. My straightforward remark left James visibly flustered. Seeing his reaction, I decided to drop another bombshell. Oh, by the way, you mentioned that your child would take after Sarah and be beautiful, didn't you? But do you know what Sarah's original face looked like?
What? Original face?
You're kidding me, right? You're marrying her, and you don't know? Sarah's had major cosmetic surgery. James' eyes widened so much they looked like they might pop out of his head. Yes, Sarah had undergone extensive plastic surgery to the point where her original features were unrecognizable. I often used to see Sarah hanging around her parents' office with nothing to do, but one day she suddenly disappeared. Sometime later, I noticed a stunningly beautiful woman I didn't recognize at the office. Out of curiosity, I asked her father, Adam, about it. Adam, is she a new employee? She's so beautiful I couldn't help but admire her.
Oh, that's Sarah.
What? It turned out that during her absence, Sarah had gone to South Korea, the mecca of plastic surgery, and completely transformed her face. When I explained this to James, he was visibly shaken but still tried to deny it.
You're just jealous because I married a beautiful wife. That's why you're making up these lies.
Jealous? Of you? Don't be ridiculous. I couldn't care less who you married. Oh, by the way, here's a picture of Sarah before her surgery. Annoyed by his baseless accusation, I pulled up an old photo on my phone and showed it to him. It was from a barbecue my parents had organized with Adam's company back when they were still running the factory. The one sitting between Adam and his wife is Sarah. If you don't believe me, feel free to ask her parents. James stared at the picture in stunned silence. Well, I couldn't blame him. Sarah had indeed transformed into a beauty, at least in appearance. Her personality, however, had only worsened since the surgery. After the transformation, she often insulted me indirectly, calling me unattractive. While I think bringing up physical appearance in this day and age is outdated, when someone takes that attitude, you have to respond appropriately. Beyond James, I was also angry at Sarah. Whether it was James or Sarah who initiated the affair, she knew full well he was married to me and still pursued him. She deserved to face consequences, just like James. Oh, and by the way, Sarah used to spend her parents' money to party at clubs and flirt with men. After the surgery, she bragged to me about a number of guys she'd been involved with. I've heard her brag about stealing other people's boyfriends multiple times. So, are you sure that baby is even yours? As soon as I voiced my doubt, James suddenly stood up without saying a word. His face turned pale, and I noticed that he was trembling slightly. "Oh, are you leaving already?" Ignoring my question, James hurriedly left my house. The next day, when I returned home from work, I saw several figures standing near my front door. Frowning, I called out to them. "Well, can I help you? Adam?" Standing there were Adam, his wife Elizabeth, their daughter Sarah, and James. As soon as Adam and Elizabeth saw me, they apologized deeply.
We sincerely apologize. Our daughter told us everything. She's done something unforgivable.
"Well, it's not ideal to discuss this at the front door. Please come in." Causing a scene at the front door would disturb the neighbors. Wanting to avoid that, I quickly invited the four of them into my house. As Sarah walked past me, she shot me a sharp glare, which I ignored. James, on the other hand, looked pale and avoided meeting my eyes entirely. "So, you said you heard everything from your daughter?"
Yes, she admitted to having an affair with your husband. To think she caused trouble for a company we have business ties with.
Adam's tone was apologetic, but Sarah's shrill voice cut in.
Dad, why are you apologizing to someone who runs a rundown factory? We're the ones giving her work, aren't we?
Before Sarah could continue, Elizabeth smacked her hard on the head.
Ouch. Mom, what was that for?
No matter how many times we explain it, your empty head doesn't get it. Our company only survived because we received work from Katherine's factory. Thanks to your actions, we're finished.
Elizabeth's words made me nod in agreement. Yes, that's true. Given the circumstances, we'll need to reevaluate our business relationship. Although our connection dates back to the previous generation, my factory is no longer in a position to maintain this partnership. Continuing to do business with Adam's company offered little benefit to mine. The economic downturn had impacted us too, and I had already been considering ending the relationship. Adam seemed to understand, nodding with a remorseful expression.
You're right. There's no helping it. Without this partnership, our company will have to close. In fact, it's been difficult for us to stay afloat for a while now. Even with the partnership, we would have needed to shut down sooner or later. This seems like a good time to start the process of ceasing operations.
What, Dad? Wait. If the company closes, there won't be any money. How am I supposed to live?
At this point, Adam turned a cold gaze towards Sarah, who was still focused only on herself.
We've spoiled you far too much. You wasted the money we worked so hard to earn, doing whatever you pleased. But that lifestyle ends now. From here on out, you'll need to work for your own living.
That's impossible. I'm pregnant.
Then have your husband support you.
Sarah turned sharply to look at James, but he quickly averted his gaze. Given James' repeated failures in finding a job, it was hard to imagine he could suddenly manage to support a pregnant wife. Judging by the sweat dripping down his face, James knew it too. Feeling exasperated by him, I turned to Adam with a suggestion. Adam, after you close your company, why don't you and Elizabeth come work for me? My company is currently struggling with a labor shortage, and we'd really appreciate having you. If any of your employees are interested, we'd be happy to hire them too. We have room for that. Adam's company had significantly reduced its workforce due to the worsening financial situation. As a result, we would be able to hire all of them at my company. In fact, hiring skilled workers from a similar industry would be a huge boon for my factory given our current staffing issues.
Are you serious?
Absolutely. In fact, I'd be grateful. You're highly skilled on the floor, and Elizabeth has excellent administrative abilities. Both of you are exactly the kind of talent we need. To be honest, Adam has quite a few shortcomings as a business owner. However, when it comes to on-site work, he is highly skilled and capable of performing at an exceptional level. Elizabeth, having supported her husband for years, possessed exceptional administrative skills. To me, they were both invaluable additions to the team. If you decide to close the company, I'd be happy to help in any way I can. I can connect you with legal professionals, like an attorney or administrative consultant, to ensure the process goes smoothly.
Thank you so much.
It seemed Adam and Elizabeth hadn't expected this outcome when they came to apologize. Their faces, initially filled with despair, now showed a glimmer of hope.
Well, what about me? You'll hire me too, right?
Having been sidelined until now, Sarah finally spoke up with a sheepish smile. I immediately shut her down. I'm only looking for capable employees. Someone who barely helped her parent company, took their money, and lived selfishly isn't the kind of person I need. My company doesn't have the capacity to support dead weight. My relentless words left Sarah speechless, her mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. It seemed like she wanted to say something, but no words came to mind. During this exchange, James, who had been completely ignored, suddenly apologized to me.
Katherine, I'm sorry. I'll divorce her and remarry you. Please forgive me.
Wait, hold on. You're talking as if I want to remarry you.
What? But you're alone now after I divorced you. There's no way you'll remarry at your age, right?
Glaring at James, who was completely delusional, I spoke sharply. Give me a break. There's no way I'd ever remarry you. Even if you offered me a fortune, I'd refuse. For the record, I don't feel the need to remarry. In this day and age, being single isn't unusual at all. Honestly, being alone is much easier than being dragged down by a self-centered man like you. My words seemed to surprise James as he stared at me with wide eyes. What he didn't realize was that I had already lost every shred of affection for him. From the moment he quit his job without warning, I was completely disillusioned. By the day he handed me the divorce papers, whatever love I had for him was gone. Now, James was nothing but a nuisance to me. So here's the deal. I can't stand hearing your voice or seeing your face. I want you out of my sight immediately.
What?
I don't want anything to do with you from now on. That's why I won't bother claiming alimony, even though I know about your affair. Besides, you don't have the money to pay anyway. But let me be clear. If you try to interfere in my life again, I'll hire a lawyer and take appropriate action. Consider yourself warned." It seemed James finally realized how much I despised him. All he had left was his deceitful wife. His foolish choices had brought his life to ruin. Understanding the harsh reality, James collapsed to the ground, utterly defeated. After that, Adam and Elizabeth helped Sarah leave. When I threatened to call the police if James stayed any longer, he left my house with unsteady steps. Later, Adam and Elizabeth reportedly disowned Sarah.
We can't take care of you anymore. Pack your things and leave immediately. From now on, you're free to live as you wish.
Wait, I'm pregnant. How can you throw out a pregnant woman this late at night?
But then Elizabeth pointed out something shocking.
You're not pregnant. You've been claiming to be for quite a while now, but your stomach hasn't grown at all. By now, it should be noticeable, but it's not.
Indeed, Sarah wasn't pregnant. She had lied about it to take James away from me. Exposed, Sarah was mercilessly thrown out of Adam and Elizabeth's house. She had no one to rely on but James, but it seemed that ever since he left my house, he had been wandering around homes of acquaintances. During that time, James had been looking for a place to live with Sarah, but with everything that had happened, the two found themselves backed into a corner. The two, who had planned to have Adam and Elizabeth pay for their new home, frantically began searching for a place to live. However, there wasn't a single landlord willing to rent to two unemployed individuals. While searching for a place to live, the two managed to find part-time jobs and began working. During this time, they reportedly stayed with various acquaintances, moving from one house to another. The house they finally managed to secure was a rundown apartment on the verge of collapse. Living cramped together in such a small space, they weren't a happy newlywed couple, but instead spent their days fighting constantly. At this rate, it seems only a matter of time before they divorce. Meanwhile, Adam and Elizabeth successfully closed their company, and as planned, their employees were hired at my factory. Thanks to their hard work, the production efficiency of my factory has significantly improved. In the end, this divorce drama worked out in my favor. Everyone involved, except James and Sarah, managed to have a happy ending. And today, I'm still working at the factory I inherited from my parents. The past few years have been tough due to the recession, but with the new hires and improved production efficiency, I'm optimistic that we'll see a significant profit next year. As for now, I have no plans to remarry. My experience with James has left me disillusioned with marriage, and I have enough savings to live comfortably on my own. I plan to fully enjoy a peaceful and independent life from here on out. Of course, if the right person comes along, I wouldn't rule out the idea of remarrying. But since I'm completely satisfied with my current life, I'll probably remain single in the future. Well then, let's get to work and make the most of today. A lot has happened, but I'm living each day to the fullest.